Thanks for joining David, Kevin, Alex, and myself for the market update for the month of March. What an absolute crazy month March was. Similar to last year, it wasn't very good. We were off 5.1% in the S&P 500, off 5.1%, the same for the S&P TSX composite, and off 9.3% for the MSCI EAFE. I'm going to pass you over to the guys who are going to give you a deeper dive into exactly what happened in the month of March. But always remember, if you have questions, want to review anything, don't hesitate to give any of us a call here. Thanks, and I hope you and the family are doing well. Take care.
This past March has been characterized by a sharp and synchronized global sell-off of equity markets around the world, driven primarily by the escalating conflict between the US and Iran. All major regions declined over the period, with international equities leading losses. The S&P 500 and the TSX were both down about 5% for the month of March, while the MSCI EAFE index dropped over 9%, as overseas markets proved more sensitive to the global trade and the energy shocks that we've been seeing.
And now what's happened, obviously, is there's concerns around inflation ticking up with energy prices soaring as a result of the conflict. Oil went from $75 a barrel up to upwards of $115. It's now since come down a little bit. As we're recording this on April 8th, there's been a 2-week ceasefire agreed to. And hopefully the end of the conflict's actually drawing near. But throughout March, the concern as the conflict was getting worse was that inflation would tick upwards. And what was once pricing in a couple rate cuts later this year by the U.S. Federal Reserve, the market started to take that right off the table, that no rate cuts would happen. And so the narrative shifted from a rate cutting environment to a holding, or maybe at worst case scenario, if the conflict persisted, that rate hikes might even be necessary if inflation headed upwards in the wrong direction and stayed there for quite some time.
One thing we want to point out is, as in all periods of volatility like this, what it can create is an opportunity for investment. So geopolitical shocks generally tend to drive the short-term market lower initially. However, market rallies can be very quick and immediate, like we've seen today with the about 2.5% to 3% recovery on most major indexes. So relief rallies can be very swift and significant, and what that means is that these can be buying opportunities for the future. If you have future goals, say 5, 10, 15, or even 20 years out, the prices that we're seeing today could prove to be a good entry point into those investments. Also, conflicts like this and the swift relief that we can see from the resolution reinforces why we recommend staying invested during times of volatility like this. You don't want to miss out on these rallies because that 2, 3, 4% can have a very meaningful impact on your overall returns for the year and your average rate of return for multiple years going forward.
Yeah. So, as usual, in times like these, who knows if we're out of the woods yet in terms of this conflict. Obviously, the 2-week ceasefire that we've heard about today is welcome news, but we'll see what happens at the end of that 2 weeks, or if a more lasting peace is negotiated in the interim. Obviously, that would be good for energy prices returning back to normal pre-war levels. Should that happen, that's obviously the optimistic scenario where markets would welcome that news. We'd see the market continue back in the direction it was going prior to the war, with rate cuts back on the table, being supportive of equity markets, and hopefully that'll be what happens. But it could be a rocky road, right? I mean, who knows? Hostilities could renew. And again, no different than last month, our advice to clients would be, don't panic, focus on the long term, recognize that, even if you're retired, you're not spending all of your portfolio next month or even next year. You do still have a long runway ahead of you. And you can't react to the short-term noise, especially when it comes to geopolitical flare-ups like this. At the end of the day, Trump's under pressure to have energy prices return back to normal. He's going to be facing midterm elections in the fall. So he's not going to want this conflict to persist. And so just remember that. Don't get too emotional or react too much, and stick with it for the long term, as we always advise.
And as always, if you have any questions about your portfolio here or any of the news headlines you've been seeing about things going on around the world, feel free to reach out to Harry, David, Kevin, or myself, and we'd be happy to talk you through it. Thanks.
Take care.